Round one, game two is going down tonight in the NBA playoffs at 7 Eastern. The 5-seeded Raptors visit the Cleveland Cavaliers down 1-0 at 8 Eastern. The Hawks look to tie things up at MSG versus the Knicks. Then at 10:30, the Nuggets look to defend home court versus the Timberwolves. And we've got your playoff picture covered from all angles with the respective NBA reporters here to break down each game. We got Vince Goodwill, Jamal Collier, and Anthony Slater with us right now. Well, let's start with the Hawks taking on the Knicks. Game two of that series set for tonight. Joined now by our NBA reporter, Vince Goodwill and Vinny. Jalen Brunson got off to a hot start in game one. However, went ice cold in the second half, 0 for 7 from the field, didn't make a shot. What is the team saying ahead of game two?
Well, one of the things that they were saying is they were leaning a little bit more on Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, Jalen Brunson had the great first half. Karl Towns scored 19 in the second half. The balance, the attack on both ends of the floor. Also, Mike Brown said that Karl Anthony Towns played some of his best defense of the year, and the numbers seem to back that up. Opponents shot just 25% against him as the primary defender. If he continues to play like that, the Knicks are going to be really formidable down the stretch.
Yeah, Cat stepped up big time in the second half, helping the Knicks win game one against the Hawks. Vinny, thanks so much for that insight. All right, let's transition and bring in our NBA reporter, Jamal Collier, with us right now as the Cavs hoping to take a 2-0 series lead over the Raptors. And Jamal, Saturday was James Harden's playoff debut for Cleveland. What are his teammates saying about his impact behind the scenes right now?
They're noticing a locked-in James Harden and one that's been more vocal around the team on the court and in film sessions in their preparation. They won that game pretty handily in game one, but he was the guy, Harden, that said he didn't feel like they played very well overall. And that really matches the intensity they've seen from Harden to call out things, use his experience to really sort of, help this team and make sure everybody is connected. They still don't have a lot of games that they've all played together, but you saw right off the bat, Harden was controlling the game. He got Jared Allen involved. His passing, his teammates have really raved about the way that he's, been able to sort of spray the ball around the floor. And the biggest thing is his leadership for the young players, for the guys who have sort of not been connected together. Harden has been the one to sort of take the onus on and really challenge these guys to play at even a higher level than they were able to reach in game one.
Yeah, James Harden with that playoff experience showing up at the right time. Jamal, thanks so much for the insight. Meanwhile, the Timberwolves will be looking to tie up their series with the Nuggets tonight in game two. Let's bring in our NBA reporter, Anthony Slater, with us right now. In game one, a bit of a struggle for Anthony Edwards. Dropped 22 points while playing on a sore knee. He missed time at the end of the regular season with that knee injury. Anthony, what's Ant-Man's status, though, for game two?
Well, he was just out here on the court about 45 minutes ago. He had a long conversation with head coach Chris Finch. Then I saw him go through a shooting routine. Like you said, questionable tonight, but he was questionable for game one and played. I'd anticipate he plays tonight. But they don't need him to just play. They need him to be awesome, right? They need him to be the Anthony Edwards that upset these Nuggets in the playoffs a couple seasons ago. And he missed, 11 of the last 14 games in the regular season. It's this persistent knee issue that it isn't as bad as the one Steph Curry dealt with, but it's clearly related. No structural problems. But this is the first time in Edwards' life he's kind of dealt with this type of injury. So, we'll be monitoring tonight, right? 22 in game one was okay. They need more.
You mentioned Steph Curry. Let's turn our attention to the Warriors. We heard from Draymond Green earlier in the show saying he doesn't think Steve Kerr will be back as head coach next season. You got a new story on ESPN.com on the summer of uncertainty that lies ahead for that team. What can you tell us about the decisions that need to be made in the Bay Area?
Well, it starts with Steve Kerr. That's what the whole franchise's focus is on. I took several calls over the weekend after Steve Kerr's Friday, comments after the game that painted almost an ominous picture about his future, of people being like, hey, is this really the end for Steve Kerr? And there were no answers over the weekend. Steve Kerr, as he said, he got away. He's contemplating his future. They have exit interviews with some of their players in the Bay Area today. I'd expect Steve Kerr and management to talk throughout this week and figure out, if it is right, if the fit is still right. And I think part of that is management, as we reported in our story today. Management wants to know that Steve Kerr still has a hunger and an invigoration for the day-to-day grind of the job, squeezing out wins. It doesn't just have to be about a farewell tour or coaching out of loyalty to Steph Curry. So it's an organization that has a lot of stuff to figure out, but it starts with the head coach.
Yeah, everyone watching that clip, and it kind of feels like the end of an era out there in the Bay Area. Anthony, thanks so much for the insight.
Now, Golden State's lost to Phoenix on Friday night. The play-in closed the book on an injury-plagued season by the Bay, but was it the beginning of the end? Steph, Draymond, and Steve Kerr, the three remaining figures of the Dynasty-era Warriors. They had that moment after last week's loss. Draymond Green spoke about it today on his podcast.
I hope he's our coach next year. I also hope I'm on this team next year. We also don't know that, which we'll get into. But I don't know, man. It felt like that was it. It really felt like that was it. What a run it's been. So lucky to have had for 12 years Steve as my coach. But I'm truly at a loss now because you just don't know. Just got to stay ready for whatever it is and, roll with the punches.
As we welcome in our NBA reporter, Brian Windhorst. So Wendy, what's your reaction to what Draymond said there?
I think he was being honest. I think there isn't a certainty, and that includes from the top reaches of the Warriors organization. They're not sure how Kerr is going to feel about this, and I think it's important to realize that this is not a situation where there's a contract sitting on the table that's just waiting for Steve Kerr's signature. Steve himself decided not to have contract extension discussions, to table them, and to go and reevaluate right now. We don't know where the Warriors are in terms of exactly what they would want to offer him. He makes $17 million. He's the highest paid coach in the league. I don't know if they want to adjust that. Anthony Slater and Ramona Shelburne had a report today about this dynamic, and they talked about how there's some factions of the Warriors front office that may want strategy changes or even staffing changes. Is this something that Kerr would even be open to? So there's a lot of things here beyond the sentimental. If this was just sentimental, It would be easy. And remember, at midseason, Draymond thought there was a chance he might get traded for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So the Warriors are entering this period here through this buildup that's been happening. At some point, we're going to see the plug get pulled. Maybe we've reached that point.
Yeah, at some point, these things come to an end as stars age and everyone wants a different philosophy with their career. And so you spoke of Anthony Slater. He's going to join us later in the hour to see what he can tell us more about the Warriors' future. I want to get to the big surprise of the weekend of the playoffs, though. The Pistons, the only home team to lose Game 1. So what concerns you about what you saw from Detroit as the top seed last night?
Well, listen, top seeds sometimes lose Game 1. We've had weekends in the past, Matt, where 4 or 5 of the higher seeds have lost at home. More concerning than the loss is how this went down. The concerns about the Pistons that have held people back on believing they can make a deep playoff runs for months manifested themselves right out of the gate, specifically with the lack of diversity within their offense. Cunningham was great. He had 39 points, but his teammates were 4 of 16 off of his passes. Jalen Duren, who's relied on to be a second offensive option, only took 4 shots, and the Pistons only made 10 three-pointers. That's even below their regular season average, which was already 28th. This is a very strong team that has a lot going for it. It's also a flawed team, and their flaws have already cost them home court advantage in round 1.
What's interesting, too, is they came into the playoffs with a chip on their shoulder because everyone was picking Boston or anyone else to come out of the East, yet in Game 1, they'd fall right into the trap of why people were saying that about them. I want to switch gears to the West because no surprise when the Spurs played the Blazers. A ridiculous performance from Victor Wembanyama last night. Wemby following in the footsteps of other Spurs legends, the Admiral David Robinson. They each had amazing year 3s in the league, and like Robinson did, Wemby is expected to take home the Defensive Player of the Year award as well. So, Wendy, when you see that, what was your reaction to Wemby's first playoff game?
Well, I wasn't surprised, but I was impressed. I mean, one of the things that we've seen from him is he has risen to challenges throughout his young career. And the team was a little jittery. Even some of his teammates mentioned that. And he comes right out of the gate. 12 points in the first quarter. Talk about settling your team down. 21 in the first half. And then when the game tightened up in the second half, he puts in, I think, 14 in the fourth quarter. He didn't have his best game.
Right.
He had a very good shooting game. He's not going to make 5 out of 6 threes, which I don't think the Admiral did back in 1990. But, he's not going to have the shooting games like this, but he's going to have games where he's even more impactful off the ball. He's going to have more games where he's got more blocks and more rebounds and more assists. If you go look at the all-time greats, the modern greats like LeBron and Durant and Steph and even Shaq and Duncan, what their first playoff games were like, This compares very, very favorably, trust me. It's one of the best first-game performances we've seen in the last 30 years.
And here's the thing with the Spurs. Everyone said they're young. Can they compete in the West? If they get confidence as this bracket advances, Oklahoma City better look out because they're confident against that team. And we're always confident with Wendy on our team. Thank you, sir.
Coming up with